change that.
Hold on. Just a second. Okay, I'm sorry. You know why? I know why. It's catching up. It just went on. It's YouTube. It's technical. It's a little long to explain, and this is the reason why I have two monitors so that I could avoid that. So they're going to be about 40 or 50 seconds behind. I think.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, I see the two of us now, so that's nice.
Well, that's good.
But,
we're both here. We're both living. You know, pulse. I'm good. And by the way, I got my New York Giants shirt on just because it was clean.
They're playing tonight. Did they play today, or they're playing tonight now?
I don't know. I don't care if they are. I wore this because it's very slimming.
Okay. All right. Well, I got to say that today we were at least half better than we were the last several days. The temperature certainly cooled down, but we still have relatively high dew point temperatures, still rather humid out there. But at least the temperatures came on down into the 70s as compared to the 90s these last few days. So feels a little bit better out there today as opposed to what we've been dealing with.
About mid-afternoon, I was out walking the dog because I'm in southern Westchester. I could almost reach your house from here. But the wind kicked up pretty good. It was about 20 to 25 for a good 10 or 15 minutes. I don't know why it kicked up the way it did, but it was a nice breeze, and I don't think temperatures were much above the low 70s from what I could see.
I was in Throgs Neck at my mom and sister's apartment complex, and they live literally right on the edge of Eastchester Bay. And as we were leaving or departing to go back north up here, the wind was really ripping across Eastchester Bay. I said to Renata, my goodness, look at that. How invigorating is this? And we actually had a little bit of light rain or a little bit of a drizzle when we were down in the Bronx, but we, I guess, rolled out of that as we headed north during the 7 to 8 o'clock hour. And thank you very much to Robert Russo for hitting super chats tonight. Thank you very much. He says, great job, guys. And I think, Joe, we got a lot of great compliments from last night's show with your friend Bob.
Yes, we did.
And we had a Louisiana contingent of viewers last night as well.
That was nice to see, to see the folks from Southeast Louisiana on the as part of the conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm only hoping that we could do something like this more often. You know, getting guests on. Bob was easy because he's retired.
Should raise his volume a little.
I just did. Thank you. Thank you. I just did. Does Joe sound okay? Can you ask her if Joe sounds okay?
Do I sound okay? Do I sound great? As I usually, Joe Rayo, I was in Atlantic Beach today and there was a strong easterly breeze.
Joe, I sound great, but Joe Chiaffi could still put up his volume a little.
Okay. You're on. It's going to catch up. Okay. It's going to catch up.
It's going to catch up, he says.
Because you're a
tomato ketchup.
You're about 30 seconds behind. Okay.
All right.
So she's going to come. The next thing is going to be is Joe's volume is too high. You're going to need to turn it down.
Yes. David Scott on the chat board says, Joe Rayo, I was in Atlantic Beach today and there was a strong easterly breeze with temperatures in the high 60s. Atlantic Beach was my old stomping grounds. In fact, I was asking, and maybe David Scott, if you're in that area, if you could post on the chat board, is there any good spot in Atlantic Beach where I can just go down with a fishing rod and do some snapper fishing, which I used to do many, many, many years ago with my uncle who lived in Atlantic Beach. So we actually fished at a place that does not exist anymore, a place called Hennings. It was a kind of a miniature marina, literally right across from where the Atlantic Beach Bridge is, but I don't think that exists anymore. We also used to fish, I think, on Jefferson Avenue in not too far away from Kings Avenue in Atlantic Beach. But I scoured the websites and everything about Atlantic Beach, Joe, and I wasn't able to find one definitive place that said, yes, you can come and you could fish and you could find, snappers and whatever here. But got That's how we ended up. My son and I, we ended up just staying up here in Putnam Valley and fishing, and looking for sunnies and smallmouth bass and whatever. So, but I'd be interested to go back to Atlantic Beach one day just to see how the old place looks. It's been a long, long time since I've been there. Anyway, it's going to be a rough day tomorrow in Louisiana, no question about it. And again, I have absolutely no qualms whatsoever in saying that I think between right now, it's a Cat 2, and the time of landfall, which may come around nightfall, local nightfall tomorrow night, between now and then, during the next 24 hours, this storm, Ida, just based upon analogs, based upon what we saw with Katrina, what we saw with Camille, it's the same time of year. It's basically the same kind of track. It's the same body of water, the Gulf of Mexico, which probably is the same temperature as it was with those other two storms. There's no problem for me to say this is going to hit Category 5. Maybe not at landfall. Maybe it'll hit Category 5, and then there'll be some eye replacement cycles between the time it gets to 5 and the time it makes landfall. But this is indeed a very, very dangerous storm right now.
And in order to achieve what you're saying, and I'm not saying it's impossible, because Camille was actually moving faster from where it moved from Western Cuba to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I mean, you literally have to see these pressures keep dropping at rates of about 2 to 3 millibars an hour, because it's got maybe another 12 hours or so before the circulation starts to, enough of the circulation will be over land that it'll probably put a halt to it. Also depends on, what happens when it gets close to the coast in that 90-degree shelf. The 90-degree water temperature shelf that's off the south coast and the southeast coast of the eastern coast of Louisiana. Hard to say, but I will tell you the surge, and I don't know what the tide times are, but they're forecasting, the Hurricane Center's forecasting 7 to 11-foot surge, and the waters in east of New Orleans, Lake Pontchartrain, and then along the Mississippi coast. And even the Alabama coast to the Florida Panhandle there, the surge is going to be impacting areas pretty far to the east because of the angle that this is coming in. So the surge is going to be a big deal here. It's definitely going to be a big deal. And the other thing I'm noticing too, in terms of the structure, Joe, is that the eye, a lot of times when you see these deepening storms, you see the eye come, and the eye forms, and then it looks like it's filling, but it really isn't. You're just getting essentially getting new rings of thunderstorms developing around it. It just keeps wrapping upon itself. And, ultimately you wind up with a really well-defined eye. And I think that's what you're seeing here in terms of the process. And then when we look on the enhanced satellite view, you can actually see on this tight shot that I have. Now, I'm using the floater here, folks. So what's happening is the storm is the floater image is designed so that the storm actually stays near the center, so the geography moves. So if you look where Louisiana is, you can see Louisiana is moving southeastward, and the storm is virtually staying in the same position in the frame of the picture. It actually helps in figuring out the motion, and you can see wobbles here just by watching the geography jogging in opposite directions sometimes. You'll see it moving southeast, and then, I noticed earlier, because it's now past that frame, Louisiana was moving southeast, and then it took a jump back to the northwest. So that kind of told you that there was a little bit of an east wobble, and the Hurricane Center made note of those wobbles as we moved along. So moved along during the day. The other thing I'm looking at, you see, it's kind of wrapping up into that. It's not quite anywhere. It's not really anywhere close to being a buzzsaw, but it was sort of like trying to start that process of looking like a buzzsaw.
Yes, and we have seen many buzzsaw-like hurricanes over the years. The first time, at least I ever used that, let's say on a television weathercast, was with Andrew back in 1992 with Andrew, or was it 91, 92, early 90s?
Yeah.
And of course, since then we've had other storms that have shown that buzzsaw look. Incidentally, the high tide tomorrow in New Orleans is roughly, I'm saying roughly now, around 8 a.m. and again at 8 p.m. And for Lake Pontchartrain, is that, am I
Lake
pronouncing that correctly?
Pontchartrain.
Pontchartrain.
Right.
Depending upon where you are along the coastline of that very large lake, its high tide is generally around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning tomorrow and 10 or 11 o'clock tomorrow night. So it looks like the higher of the two tide cycles for both places will be the morning tide cycle. So tomorrow morning's tide cycle, that storm will be much closer to the coastline. Should really be something. And then tomorrow evening, landfall, and unfortunately, landfall will coincide pretty much with the high tide cycle in the evening, although again, it's not going to be quite as high according to these predictions as the morning cycle, but still it likely will be very, very bad.
It's a good thing the full moon was last week.
Correct. Now the moon is approaching last quarter phase, and last quarter and first quarter, you have what are called neap tides, which are kind of like neutral tides. They're not overly high like the astronomical high tides of full and new moon. They are in between, and they're actually, as I just noted, neutral tides. They're as low as the normal during the 28-day cycle of the moon. They're as low as they will get, and once we get past the weekend, they'll start to come up again because next weekend we'll be approaching new moon phase. Let's hope we don't have any tropical cyclones affecting parts of the United States with new moon next weekend.
By the way, I'm looking. I got the chat board. I have the chat board on my phone, and I got the volume turned down, so I can't hear the show. So I can see the comments. So it looks like the folks are not that many seconds behind us in the lag. I've got the recon. Let's look at the latest recons, the 2 recon fixes, and I'm just going to give this a quick go. We have a 3rd recon fix. So we went from 974 to 970, now at 967. So we've gotten, I'm assuming this is 2 hours. So we've dropping, figure a fix an hour. So we've dropped 7 millibars in the last 2 hours, Joe. So we are definitely seeing, rapid. This is what's strengthening rapidly is when you start seeing pressures drop 2 to 3 millibars an hour. You're strengthening rapidly, and
Right.
I'd also point out, if you look at the wind barbs on that 974 fix to the northeast, there are a bunch of wind barbs that are in the light purple, so that's 83 to 96 knots. And then also on the 967 fix, there are a few wind barbs there where we're seeing 83 to 96 knots. So wind field certainly is matching up. 96 knots. Let's just average it out. So let's say 90 knots at flight level. So I mean, they're carrying 105. I really don't have a problem with that. That makes sense. And oftentimes the pressure, because we saw this today, oftentimes the pressure falls, but the winds don't reflect the fall of the pressure for a couple of hours. So it kind of has to, there's a lag there sometimes, and it does play catch up. So perhaps on the next fix around, we might see a 96 to 113 knot wind barb in there somewhere.
Right. It's not going down. Let's put it that way. It's not, if you're hoping for, a sudden drop off or a sudden rise in the central pressure, it ain't happening. It's going to be this way, as you said, Joe, for at least the next 12 hours, if not maybe a little longer. And at 2 to 3 millibar drop per hour, that certainly is going to mean a rapid ramping up or an intensification of this system. And again, when I wake up tomorrow morning, I will not be at all surprised if they say that the storm has intensified to a very strong Cat 3, or maybe even by tomorrow morning a Cat 4. That's how rapid, how quickly this thing is expected to, or at least how I expect it to intensify over the coming hours.
By the way, I just because I think this is important, on the GFS had a 978 pressure for 8 o'clock this evening, so it's already 9 millibars too high. So just let's use that. If you want to use that as a correction, it's got a 960. I think that's a 960. I can't even read it. I mean, it has a 969 pressure at landfall, which is just ridiculous. It's going to be going to be a lot lower. It's already lower than that, and it's not as if it's suddenly running into a neutral environment where it's not going to continue to strengthen. It is going to continue to strengthen during the overnight and strengthen fairly rapidly. Let's give a look at the intensity guidance. Now, at this stage of the game, this is just. I mean, really, it is not a whole lot of use to this. But
by the way, Joe. By the way, I don't mean to cut you off, but just as a matter, as we were just talking about the pressure, the central pressure, I said let's go to our old friend the NAM 3 kilometer and see how they're handling this. The NAM 3 kilometer. Now get this, folks, at 16Z tomorrow. That's 12 noon, high noon Eastern Daylight Time.
I can bring it up.
Tomorrow, the pressure is predicted by the 3 kilometer NAM to be 885 millibars.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I see 890. What is that? 899 going into the coast. 896, 897, 901, 908. Huh.
Well, what's 885? 885, for those of you who have your classic aneroid barometer hanging on the wall of your room or office, is equivalent to 26.134 inches of mercury. I highly doubt, as much as I'm anticipating rapid intensification, I highly doubt it's going to go all the way down that low. But
right. Well, it was already 13 millibars too low because at 0Z it had a 954 pressure, so it was at 967-ish. So. Mm-hmm. So you want to go to 0Z, it was probably more like 969. So it was 15 millibars too low. So you could already at the very least, add 15 millibars to those numbers that you saw at the coast.
Yes.
The NAM 3 is just not. The NAM 3 has been doing this for years with these ridiculous, taking everything to a Category 5. Broken clocks are right twice a day, and every once in a while it's going to get it right. But not when it's the only model doing this. If there were a couple of the other models were taking it down into the 920s or 930s, I'd say, okay, well, then it kind of makes sense. But I think we're probably going to get down to I'm thinking inside 950, maybe down to 940. I would go lower if only because of the time constraint. That's the only thing that's probably holding me back on that. And
well, why don't we just, for the heck of it, why don't we do, you could, I think, it wouldn't be so bad if you took the NAM 3 and the GFS, average the two together. You'd probably come up with a much closer value with an average between those two models, as opposed to just relying on either one or the other.
So the GFS is a 969 at landfall, and the NAM 3 has a 901. So split the difference, 935. Great way to forecast.
Yes.
Add them both together and divided by 2. And beats calculus.
You do what you have to do.
Right. The intensity guidance at this stage of the game is kind of pointless, but I'll bring it up because if I don't, somebody will ask me to. So you've got the vast majority of models taking this up to Category 3. We're almost there. You've got one model. The intensity guidance kind of came back a little bit today. Then it kind of nudged back up late in the afternoon. But again, just kind of looking at it for laughs. And then with respect to the 0Z track guidance, we've seen a very subtle shift to the left because if you plotted this by hand during the day, and that's a point I want to expand on. If you plotted this during the day by recon fixes or however, you would have picked up on a couple of instances where there was a slight eastward jog. So there has been a slight eastward jog into the tracks, but you see how tight they are. They're centered right around Houma, Louisiana. And the Hurricane Center is giving you the clue because they are using Houma as a reference point as far as landfall is concerned. And I do have on the interactive map, Joe, since yesterday where the line was drawn near Morgan City, now it's shifted a little bit east to Houma, and then it was west of Baton Rouge, about halfway between Baton Rouge and Lafayette. Now it's right on top of Baton Rouge. So there's been this kind of very subtle, small, ticks to the right, and there might be another tick or two to the right, but this I think is going to wind up being fairly close. And I just want to add a couple of things here. The storm surge warning covering all of southeast Louisiana, and you can see they added it all the way east to Mobile, including Mobile Bay on the Alabama coast. And with respect to, I'll put the cone on there because everybody likes the cone. But here's what it looks like with the cone of uncertainty.
Yeah.
My dog didn't have my dog didn't have to wear the cone of shame. You know what I mean by the those big cones that they wear after they've gotten fixed.
Right.
That's
right.
The cone of shame is what that is.
Lonnie Quinn has a golden doodle, and that's a mixture between a golden retriever and a poodle. And I suspected the dog was going to be like 20, 25 pounds, somewhere along those lines. The damn dog is almost 70 pounds, Joe. It's almost as big as Lonnie himself. And last week, he said that his dog was going to lose a couple of pounds with a specific procedure that had to be done. And I said to Lonnie,
I'm sure when you remove 2 softballs, it's going to make a difference.
I said to Lonnie, I said, you mean he's going to have his Wiener Schnitzels?
Yes.
Yes. And he did.
And he did. Well, mine was already done when I got him, when I picked him up at the shelter. So there you see,
Lovely.
You see the hurricane track. And by the way, for the longer term, the tracking models take a sharp right turn across Tennessee. And remember, folks, this is the area that had those devastating floods back just a few, less than a week ago. They're going to get, if this track verifies, you're going to see some double-digit rainfall amounts in Tennessee again. And we've got a number of models, a couple of models bring the remnant low, which really looks like a deepening frontal wave when you look at it. Some of them take it right just to our north. Some of it takes just to our south off the Delaware coast. Either way, it does seem that we're going to get into a soaking rain here. I'm thinking about Wednesday.
Yep, it looks like I timed it out sometime between later Wednesday into maybe later Thursday. There's a good 18 to 24 hours of precipitation, and yeah, it could very well be on the heavy side. But I still think we need to wait maybe another day or two after the thing gets into it moves inland. The models will have a better chance of looking at this and analyzing it and tracking it on a more specific course. But right now, yeah, you're right. If it takes the track, if you take everything at face value right now, it does look like we'll be into a period of potentially heavy precipitation just in time for the beginning of September. September starts on Wednesday.
Yes, it does. I went back to the U.S. loop because I want to make not to forget our friends in the West, but of course, here we have Ida, and here we have Nora.
Nora.
And the reason why, you can see the hurricanes the way they are, and the fact that there is enough distance between them in the upper atmosphere is creating a great outflow, an absolutely terrific outflow pattern for. But I don't mean terrific is not a positive or a negative word. I'm using that to describe the meteorology here, folks.
Textbook.
Yes, it's a textbook terrific outflow pattern over Ida. I don't know why that happened, but I lost that trough. But the reason why I want to bring up Nora is that it's going to be moving, literally straddling off the coast of Mexico, just barely offshore, and going right up the Gulf of California. Now, that has its own implications for those areas there. When you've got a hurricane that goes up the Gulf of California, it is, that's flooding that goes up that way. But
right.
more importantly is the fact that a lot of this moisture is going to wind up getting into the Southwest, and they're going to see at least some benefit in terms of rainfall there into the Southwest, and there's a lot of areas there that are in serious multi-year droughts that need to be broken. So the 7-day rainfall by the WPC does bring at least a couple of inches of rain up into Arizona and parts of Colorado, New Mexico, Utah. So that's a big plus as far as they're concerned. And of course, you can see what WPC is doing in the east. And they've now actually, Joe, expanded the rain area over New Jersey and Long Island and southern New England. So now they've got 1.5 inches up to the Massachusetts-Connecticut line into northeastern Pennsylvania, and they got the 2-inch plus area nosing across northern New Jersey and Long Island on Wednesday. And of course, we all know we do need the rain. Ha ha. You see even bigger amounts back through southern PA, West Virginia. You get into Kentucky, Tennessee. You start talking about 3 to 5, 3 to 6 inch amounts. And of course, in the storm's track, just east of the track, you've got 10 to 15 and a little stripe of 15 plus. I think Bob made a good point last night. If this thing is moving along, it might be difficult to put down those really high numbers. Okay, maybe you will get double digits, but you might be closer to 10, I think, than you would be to 15. But let's see what happens when it makes landfall and how fast it's moving to figure that out. Here's their official forecast. That purple is 15 to 20 that they have drawn just west of New Orleans. Right. So I'm not saying it's impossible. It might be a little bit high, though, given if this thing is moving along at 15 or 16 miles an hour, it might be just a tad too high. But we'll see. Oh, here's another thing. I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate things, but I want to make sure I get to this. And of course, I just realized that I didn't even send the notification out on my app to get those folks on board. What did I do with WPC's forecast? I guess maybe I took it down. So let's see if I can bring it back up. Sorry about that. SBC. So WPC, because you brought this yesterday, has a marginal risk tonight in southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and southernmost Alabama. But then for tomorrow, Joe, they added a big area of slight risk. And I was reading their discussions, and I don't know if you got to read their discussion, but it was very interesting. They said that, where's the line? Will likely be, this is the new discussion. The old discussion, here it is. As the forecast track of intensity for Ida has not changed much since the previous outlook, tropical cyclone tornado analogs also remain unchanged. A few previous storms matching the track speed and or strength are Katrina in 2005, Gustav in 2008, and Ike in 2008. Each one of these storms produced numerous tornadoes. Katrina producing the most, 59 tornadoes produced with Katrina. These historical analogs and favorable environment merits maintaining a 5% tornado probability throughout much of the right front quadrant, with a 2% probability and a 5% thunderstorm wind gust probability across more of the lower Mississippi Valley in the southeast. Makes total sense to me.
Well, if the forecaster's name is Lightman, who made that pronouncement, and if I had Mr. Lightman with me right now, I would say you said that the historical analogs and favorable environment merit maintaining a 5% tornado probability. Well, so far this season, Joe, on a couple of occasions, we have seen as high as a 10% tornado probability out somewhere in the Midwest. So if you've seen in the past and you're matching this storm up with storms like Katrina and Ike and Gustav, and mentioning that Katrina had the most tornadic activity at 59, how much higher do you have to go above that before you finally break down and say, okay, enhanced risk near the landfall or to the right of the landfall falling point? I don't mean to be one
and they may juice that up tomorrow. They may go up. Yeah. They may juice that up tomorrow morning.
Well, we said yesterday or last night with Bob that they for Sunday they only had a marginal risk, and I said they likely are going to bump that up into a slight chance tomorrow, which they have done, and now perhaps they are listening to you, Joe, and tomorrow they will consider to put that enhanced area or enhanced zone to the right of the landfall point within that slight risk they now have out there. But I mean, if you're talking about historically, a storm like this, of this magnitude, producing, 30, 40, even close to 60 tornadoes in the past. I mean, what more do you need to go higher than? Because we see 2% and 5% a lot up here.
Yeah.
I would think that it would be higher. That's my own humble opinion.
Earlier in the discussion, they mentioned the fact that the dew points were up in the range of about today. We're up in the range of about 74 to 78. So just the dew points are going to be off the wall tomorrow over there. They're going to be in the they're going to be in the mid to upper 70s.
It's going to be juiced up, no question about it. And that's why I said from the start. And it's interesting, that the forecaster, I wish I knew his first name, but Lightman. It's interesting how, at least at the Storm Prediction Center, they fell back on analogs. Whenever you see something like this, whenever I see something like this, I say, okay, let's see if we can match this up with other storms, which we've done for the last couple of days. And I'm glad that there are other forecasters that are to a degree agreeing with me on that point. And that's why I say I honestly believe that we will see by daybreak either a very strong 4 or maybe even a Category 5 storm in the area near or just off of the Louisiana coast. I hate to say that, but I think that's going to be the story. I mean, we saw Katrina, we saw Camille, 155 sustained with gusts to 175, and that could very, very likely. I saw the governor today who made a speech and said this could be the worst storm, the worst hurricane that they have seen in Louisiana since the 1800s, the 1850s. I said, really? I mean,
they didn't have hurricanes in the 1800s. They didn't have
I gotta find
them.
I have to look at that,
Joe.
I'd have to look for the quote, but I did like a double take. I said, really? You forgot about Katrina all of a sudden, or I didn't understand that statement.
Yeah, well, I mean, Katrina, when the levees breached, Bob Breck made this point last night, was the fact that when they rebuilt the levees after Katrina, they built them correctly. That whole story, by the way, having lived in New Orleans for 3 years, and don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful town. Okay, but if you think politics are corrupt here, you haven't lived until you've been into Louisiana. Okay, where the dead people really do vote. All right, no, Joe, I'm serious. In Orleans Parish, and I know you have the story about the parishes versus counties, but in Orleans Parish, when they had statewide elections, what would happen is all the votes would be counted, and then a big political operative would call down to Orleans Parish and literally would say, okay, here's how many votes I need. I need this many votes for this person, this many votes for that person, this many votes for this person, and on and on. And an hour later, all of a sudden, magically, those votes would appear. And everybody knew it. That's how it was. So the fact that they built those original levees, didn't build them well, it shouldn't just be a surprise to anybody. But as Bob said last night, when they rebuilt them after Katrina, they built them right this time. So if the levees don't breach, they will get through this. Okay, but if the levees breach, then that's a whole. And we pray to God that they don't breach.
And here's the quote. Here's the quote. I just to make clear that I didn't make this up or whatever. Hurricane Ida, which is expected to strike Louisiana as a life-threatening Category 4 storm with wind speeds of 140 miles an hour, will be one of the strongest to hit the state since at least the 1850s. And that is a quote from Governor John Bell Edwards at an afternoon briefing today. So he said this is going to be one of the strongest since the 1850s. And when I saw that, I kind of scratched my head and said, well, that must have been a heck of a storm in the 1850s for you to say that.
Well, the Edwards family's been basically running the state since the 1850s. So, look, I understand when they go to hyperbole because, again, to go back to Bob, those who live by the theory of Darwin, won't leave. So unless you really kind of push the envelope with it's the worst storm that we've ever seen, take it right to its apocalyptic conclusion, you're going to have people that are not going to do what they should be doing just to be safe. I mean, listen, when these storms happen, you don't want you want the forecast to go off a little bit, at least in terms of something less powerful or less strong. So I get why the politicians do the hyperbole. I guess because over the years, we've heard it so many times. And then, of course, the one time, at least from the standpoint of New York, the one time, and New Jersey, the one time when hyperbole was definitely justified and was completely ignored by politicians, and certain politicians in particular, was with Hurricane Sandy. But we won't go down that road now. We've been down that road many times before. All right, so just let's. I'm going to jump over. Let's get rid of the NAM 3. Let's go to. I looked at the GFS. I looked at the European today. I mean, it all does look fairly straightforward from the standpoint. All right, hold on. Let me get the GFS up. I want to put the 500 up just to show everybody what's going on here. And let's see. Okay, so here's our upper air as it stands at the moment. And you see the ridge that is sitting in the southeastern part of the United States. There's an upper high over South Carolina. Ida is moving right along the western edge of that upper high. You've got this strong west to east flow across the northern tier with a little upper low there north of Superior, another one that's coming into Vancouver. And over the next few days, what we're going to see happen is that ridge weakening, Ida coming inland, a trough.
We need the map. We need the maps, Joe.
Sorry. Hold on.
Sorry.
Well, good. Thanks for telling me.
You're doing so well. I hate to break in on a
no,
on your discussion.
You have to. My head's going in 500 different directions when I'm thinking about these things, and I forgot to switch. Okay, so now the maps are up. All right, no harm done here. So I'll just run it back. There's your ridge sitting right in the southeastern part of the United States. There's an upper high in South Carolina. This is for tomorrow evening. Storms coming ashore, west to east flow. Pretty much north of 40 degrees north, upper low in Vancouver, upper low sitting just southeast of Lake Winnipeg, just north of Lake Superior. So what happens? The ridge, of course, weakens. Ida lifts up, and now you've got this trough that's moving into eastern Canada, and you have a short wave that's coming around it. So it really drops those westerlies very far south, all the way down into northern Florida. The system that represents Ida sort of emerges with that northern shortwave, so that's why it sort of looks like a frontal low. It looks like a developing frontal wave when it gets to us. And then the trough goes out. We'll probably have a nice shot of cool, dry air for a couple of days behind it going into the Labor Day weekend. Then the westerlies come up a little bit, but they don't come up a lot. And it looks like, the northwest flow from Canada is going to be close by. The models are forming another tropical storm or hurricane from something moving off the African coast later this week. But if there's troughing off the East Coast, it's likely to just be a fish storm and turn out. I mean, at least if the way this particular run is timed, there's a long way to go, obviously, before we know that for sure. But you can see that the upper, it's interesting, Joe, the upper air across Canada is getting fairly busy as we go into the first week and a half of September. So it does show at least a couple of cold fronts coming through and maybe some nice shots of dry air behind it. So it's an interesting upper air. And with respect to the remnants, oh, by the way, I was just reminded of two things. Sal Blandino pointed out to me that there have only been 2 weekends this summer that have been completely rain-free. And the other thing is, based on my forecast for the middle part of the week, he's scheduled his haircut for Tuesday. So I just thought, we'd want to know these things. Okay, so tomorrow, folks, the stalled frontal boundary actually drifts a little bit further south tonight into tomorrow morning. Gets down. Oh, come on, this is really annoying me. There it is. But it gets down almost to the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula with that nice high sitting in southeastern New Hampshire. Should be another day much like today. I've been describing it as changeable skies with maybe a passing shower or downpour. And then as we move on to Monday, we'll get back to being very warm and humid. Another cold front approaches. Monday evening, maybe a shower or thunderstorm with that. It stalls out, and as so many have. And now, of course, you can see Ida moving northeastward. Again, looks almost like a frontal, it looks like almost a low in the wintertime on a cold front, riding northeastward. Depending on, initially it does go west of the Appalachians. It just kind of translates itself eastward into southern Pennsylvania and over Long Island by early Thursday morning. So this would say, maybe a soaking rain during the day, Wednesday into Wednesday night, and then dry later Thursday, Friday, and maybe Saturday, you start to turn a little warmer and a little more humid going into the Labor Day holiday weekend. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yes, and regarding that system, you mentioned it may be a fish storm. The next one on the list is the J storm. That would be Julian. And then after Julian comes Kate. And after Kate comes Larry. So those are the next three names on our list after Ida. And
nice.
We'll see. We'll see where they all end up.
Let's go back to the recon. Let's see if we've got another fix and a few more wind barbs. A lot of 64 to 83 knot winds out there. No new center fix after that 967. That was at 0134. So that was actually, the map's time was probably updated at 0134. So this is as of 10 minutes ago. I'm trying to see where the plane icon is. I can't. Oh, there it is. It's all the way. It's going toward Florida. So I don't know if they're done. Sometimes they have a second flight there at the same time. Let's see if they do. You never know. That was mission 10. Let's look at mission 11. No, mission 11 is in Ida. Is it? No, it's not. It's at 27 and 89. So it's not quite there. 28 and 89. So looks like they have another plane going in there, but they're going to be in there long after our show is done. Landfall tomorrow, what? I'm thinking mid to late afternoon. It seems to be, chugging right along. So if it doesn't slow down, maybe around 4, 5, 6 o'clock, somewhere in there. What do you think?
I'm thinking again, maybe toward late afternoon, or if you want to really stretch it in case it slows down suddenly, maybe nightfall. Again, I pointed this out to a couple of people today. I said, have you noticed with the shortening of the days now, the sun is now setting in many areas an hour earlier as compared to back at the middle part of June. So slowly but surely, we are edging back into the cooler. Well, it's not so cool now overall, but you'll begin to really notice the effects of that shortening of the days very, very soon. So, yeah, late afternoon and toward evening tomorrow, Joe, and that's, I'm sure, when we're gonna. What surprised me? I watched turning on CNN at 10 o'clock this morning and seeing Wolf Blitzer, and he was, of course, talking about the problems over in Afghanistan, but they also talked about Ida, and they actually had. They said, let's go to the CNN Weather Center, and I said to myself, CNN has a weather center? I mean, I'm saying that sarcastically because back in the day, of course, we could remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, they actually had reporters there, like the Weather Channel,
right,
reporting and having meteorologists telling you everything. But in the current state of affairs of the world today, and the way CNN has decided to cover world events, it seems that weather suddenly got lost in the process. And I was surprised to actually see somebody see the CNN weather set. I said, my goodness, I can't even remember the last time I saw a CNN meteorologist, but there she was this morning. I forgot what her name was, but they actually had somebody talking about the weather as opposed to all the other craziness that's going on in the world in recent months and even recent years.
Yeah, well, you know, these channels are all driven by raging politics, and you know, it sucks. I don't know about you, but when it just, I can't watch because it sucks the life out of me, and I don't need that negativity in my life.
Yes.
Anyway, all right. So I think we pretty much covered it all for today. So thanks for everybody for being here. Joe and I will have a relatively short turnaround because in just 13 hours, he and I will be back here at 11 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow to set up the day for Ida as it makes its way towards the Louisiana coast. 104 likes. Thank you so much for those of you who've hit the like button tonight. Most appreciated. Robert Russo, thank you very much for hitting Super Chat. Also much appreciated. That's how we earn our living nowadays, folks. It's this channel. So we do like it when you hit the tip jar. Okay. Anyhow, have a great night. Everybody stay safe. If you're watching from Southeast Louisiana, hoping everything comes out okay. But we'll be here tomorrow to hold your hand, meteorologically speaking, and take you through. So those of you that I've noticed on the chat board, a number of you mentioning that you're in that area or you've got relatives in that area. I used to own I owned a house in Kenner, and when Katrina happened, I was in the only spot in Jefferson Parish that wasn't underwater. I don't know how I managed to be so lucky as to pick a place that didn't get flooded, but somehow I did. That was a good lottery ticket to hit. Okay, Joe, you could say good night tonight.
Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow in about 13 hours.